I was talking to a man, I think recently. Yeah, in fact, within the last few days, I believe, whose wife has been doing Real Love for, at least 3 years that I can remember. She's much happier. She was a bit of a wreck when I first met her, and not meant as a criticism, just a description to delineate the difference, and is so much calmer and more confident and more loving and able to listen, and wow, she's just a genuinely sweet person. And he finally came and said, so I want to be a happier person. I want to be a better husband. And no matter what I said, he argued with me, which is not unusual. I should state for those who are not familiar, I have absolutely no interest in arguing with people. If they say 2 + 2 is 5, and I'm sticking with that story, then I go, okay. Now, if they ask me what's 2 + 2, and I say 4, and they say no, 5, then I'm still going to let them be right pretty much of the time. But he was asking me how he could be a better person and husband, and he fought every answer. So I finally said, you realize that you've argued with almost everything I've said. That's just way too fun a thing to say. I should tell people ahead of time, you're going to fall into this trap, so be careful. Because when I say, you realize you've argued with everything I've said, the answer is so predictable. They say, no, I haven't, which of course is another argument. I said, you asked, I didn't call you. You asked me how you could have a better marriage. So forget whether I'm right, you're right. Forget that. Have you noticed how much happier she has been in just the past year? He paused, long pause, and said, well, I guess so. I said, no, I know her too well. Try it again and just tell the truth without doing the long pause, which is supposed to make you sound reluctant and skeptical and intellectual. Forget the pause, just tell the truth. Have you noticed in the last year whether she's happier? He said, yes. I wanted to pat him on the head and say, what a good boy, but I didn't do that. I said, a little happier or a lot happier? He said, a lot happier. I said, do you know why she's been happier in the last year? No. And I'm thinking, yeah, you do, or you wouldn't be calling me. I said, because she made a choice to simply, in the beginning, trust me. That's hardly the foundation for somebody's life, but in the beginning, that's all she had to hang on to. She never trusted anybody. And she learned to trust me because when I teach her something, it works. In fact, if she does it, it works every time. And because when she trusts that I love her, she's also happier. So she's learned to trust the love I have for her, and she's learned to trust what I say to her, because she can feel the love and she can see the product of the truth. So I'm going to give you a tip, since you called and asked. The more you trust me instead of arguing, the more she'll trust you. I was trying to keep it simple. And he said, that sounds like blackmail. I couldn't help myself. I burst into laughter over the phone. I had not anticipated that answer. Blackmail. You called me to ask me for help, and now you think I'm blackmailing you. I said, okay, so then don't trust me. You will frustrate my efforts to blackmail you. Don't trust me, and let me know how it goes. And he said, well, I think I need some help. Yeah, You do, or you wouldn't be calling. I said, I don't ever do anything but help her to be more loving. And because of that, you win. Because the person she ends up loving isn't me, it's you. I love her unconditionally. It's a one-way deal. I love her like a parent. So she doesn't love me back. That would turn it into a trading, and I'm not really interested. So the person she passes it on to is you. You win from this. If she doesn't believe that you trust me, then I'm not the one who comes off as untrustworthy. You do. In fact, you come off as a little dumb. He got it. With anybody, I just supply a rope to help people up the cliff, down the cliff, take your pick, down the cliff for the first time. You don't have to take the rope. But most people can't go down a sheer cliff the first time by themselves. It takes practice. The rope just makes it easier. Keeps you from dying, too. Next person wrote and said, I'm feeling a little guilty this morning. I don't reach out very much to my family and to my old friends. I said, well, I would suggest that this might be because you don't want to. It's fairly uniform that we do what we want to do. We claim we don't, but no, we tend to. When people say, well, I don't want to hurt you. Yeah, they really do. Because if they really didn't want to hurt us, they wouldn't. So, no guilt. It's just that after an entire lifetime of trying to make everybody happy, which would include your family and friends, you're just learning who you are. You're discovering what a life with love is like instead of being controlled by duty and obligation and guilt. That's going to save your life. And in the meantime, these other people, most of whom contributed to your feeling guilty and not loved, they can just wait while you find happiness yourself. Because see, they're not asking for it. You are. So busy yourself with something that matters, something you can control, which is what you learn and how loving you are. She continued, they're all wondering what's going on with me. Well, sure, because you're changing. And in that circle of friends and family, nobody changes. That's usually, in fact, why we keep the same friends for 20 and 30 years. Because everybody has perfected a certain style and quantity and way of trading, and we stay with the people who understand the trade. Really, no kidding. You're changing. You're doing things differently. And they're finding that a little weird, so they're wondering what's wrong with you. They pay you and you don't pay them back like you always used to. Too bad. If you really want to be happy, you have to go through this process. And in the meantime, you don't need to be encumbered by the guilt that you feel toward them, which will just slow you down. She continued, my sister is pregnant, and she would probably like it if I reached out to her more and gave her more support. I feel like I'm not being loving enough to my family and friends. You've all heard me say this before. You can only be as loving as you can freely offer. If it's not freely offered, it's not unconditional love, with no guilt. If you feel forced to offer it, it's not really love. It's just duty and obligation. And here are two people exchanging duty and obligation, and it might look like service, and it could actually be service from the outside, but it ain't love, and it doesn't feel like love. She concludes, like I'm living this selfish life of just being happy on my own, not caring enough about others. Do you think I should try to be more loving to them? Call more often maybe, but show more interest in them, Am I not being selfish? To an extent, yeah, you are being selfish in the same way that when I had my knees replaced, I laid there in the hospital bed and took pain medication, and I didn't sweep a single floor. I didn't mow anybody's lawn. I didn't take anybody's phone calls. I didn't do anything for anybody else during the immediate period while I was healing. Not a thing. Was I selfish? Yeah, necessarily selfish. While I healed in a hospital bed, that's where you are. You are being selfish. You're taking care of yourself, and you need to. If you feel like offering love to somebody, inquiring after their welfare, for example, fine, if you can do it freely, but you are nearly destroyed by obligation and guilt. You don't need your present progress slowed by drinking out of that sewer anymore. You just don't. New subject. A man wrote and said, a former pastor at my church did a scandalous thing. I love that word. You walk into a room and go, there's been a scandal. And everybody goes, really? They're dying to hear the next word out of your lips. If you doubt that, walk into a room and say, man, I heard of this unbelievable scandal, and then just pick up a book and read it. So, former pastor did a scandalous thing, carried on an affair while married, and had a child with her lover, whom she later married. Recently, she hosted a speaker at her home, and I attended the presentation, thinking that I should just simply accept and love her. Well, how sweet of you. When do people not need love? Really? If this minister had an affair while married, while living supposedly a commitment to her husband personally and according to her religion, then if she did that, knowing of her commitment, she was certain to be in a lot of pain from not feeling loved. That's why she had an affair, was because it gave her the illusion of feeling loved for a period of time. So what would she need if her pain was not feeling loved? Criticism, ostracism, condemnation? No, she'd need to feel unconditionally cared for. And you did what you could to give her your love. What a kind act on your part. You say, my friends, however, refused to attend since they said they had, quote, no respect for her anymore. So did she teach one thing as a minister and live another? Yes, and there's a word for that. Was she a hypocrite? Yes. And which of us, really, raise your hand, has not done that? Which of us has not claimed to live one way but yet lived another? Which of us has not taught one thing and yet not lived up to those teachings? She was just more visible as the minister. And oh, how we love to criticize people who claim to be righteous or good in public. Why? Because it makes us feel better about ourselves. It provides what I sometimes refer to as a moral basement. We love to have somebody that we're better than. I mean, whoa. That's why we love the people who are at the left end of the bell curve. It promotes us up to the middle or better. You continue. And these people didn't go because they believed that their attendance meant that they endorsed her behavior. Well, it's pretty absurd reasoning. I don't endorse the behavior of a great number of politicians or government officials, but I don't move out of the country because I'm afraid that I'll be seen as endorsing their policies. No, I live here. And since they are duly elected properly, then I support the laws that they enact, and I support the policies that they execute. I support their efforts to do good. I vote for the people that I think will do the best job. And then if I think that they screw up, well, then sometimes I support them even more, hoping that they'll be better people and that they'll discover their better nature. But to leave the party or to quit endorsing them because they make one mistake, or to move out of the country because the leaders of the country make a mistake, I mean, where would that end? Everybody around me does wrong things. Everybody, including me. So what would it be like if I withdrew from all of them? Now, would I attend a Ku Klux Klan rally or a march to hate fill in the blank. Jews, Christians, gays, women, whatever. No. But that's kind of obvious, isn't it? I mean that's not attending something that espouses a principle that is obviously wrong, as opposed to not attending something because there's a flaw in the person who's speaking. And I certainly wouldn't stop loving these people even if they did espouse a principle who's wrong. I know people in the KKK, and I don't hate them. I think they're a little misguided. I wouldn't vote for them for political office, but I don't stop loving them. And if they invited me to their house for okra and black-eyed peas, I'd go. Actually, I have. So, no, I wouldn't shun them and avoid them because they've made mistakes, what I would even call moral mistakes. And your minister wasn't inviting a speaker who supported marital infidelity. She simply made a mistake in that area, which obviously she's now worked to correct since she subsequently married the guy she once had the affair with. What else could she do? You say, you conclude, I understand that other people's mistakes are none of my business, but how might I deal with the objection that my attendant seems to be approving irresponsible behavior? You tell people, if they ask, which is, by the way, none of their business, that you're supporting the person, not the mistake. As I talked about, all people make mistakes. They need our love always. The entire world needs love always, not our condemnation. And unless you're attending an event advocating something wrong, anybody with any sense at all would understand that you're not advocating the mistake of the person running it. This minister made a mistake and changed her life. Well, good for her. You're supporting her courage, her growth, not her mistake. And anybody who wouldn't listen to that just is determined to make her evil and you evil. I got an email, new subject, from somebody who said, I've been studying real love for a while, and I've concluded that you're saying that the use of all my getting and protecting behaviors, in caps, all, is due to the primary wounds caused by the unloving choices of my parents. Yeah, that pretty much is what I'm saying. Your parents, and by that I mean, if you were raised by your grandparents, then effectively they were parents, or your aunt and uncle, or your whoever, did two huge things. First, they wounded you by not loving you, which left you in pain and therefore always reacting to pain, even now, 50 years later. Doesn't matter how much later it was. If all we know is pain, we're still reacting to it till the wounds heal. And two, they taught you how the world is. They taught you that the world is painful, hopeless, a place where people trade, and on and on. And now it's your responsibility to change your life. They're not going to do it for you, only you. Let me read this from a blog. If you've never been loved, fear is not a choice, it's a reflex. If you have been loved, fear can still be a reflex, but now you can choose what happens next. End quote. So, hence the need for wise people to love and teach. Love, so your wounds will heal. Remember, our parents didn't give us the love that we needed, so that we don't have to be reacting to pain all the time. And they can teach us so that we can see loving choices we never saw before, because we weren't taught these loving choices as children. As I teach people what love looks like, I'm talking about 50 and 60-year-old people, they look at me with wide eyes, often filled with tears, going, I have never in my life known that this loving choice was even a possibility. And if you don't know that a choice is a possibility, then that choice doesn't exist, does it? All you can do is react to pain. And then it's all up to you to take in the loving and teaching that are offered to you. You conclude, I still keep wanting to forget that this is the case, meaning the case that my behaviors are a reaction to the primary wound. But why would you want to forget what's true? Seems insane, but we forget what's true in great part because we get something from believing lies. You get something from believing lies, or you wouldn't forget. If you believe the lies, you can conclude that you're just worthless, which is what you were taught, and so there's nothing you can do about your life. You're worthless and helpless. Then you don't have any responsibility to learn and grow. You can just sit in the little mud hole where you live and whine and cry about how hard life is. Now, that sounds crazy. Why would somebody want to sit and whine and cry in a mud hole? Well, because it's the mud hole you've known your entire life. And what if there are lions, tigers, and bears outside the mud hole, to quote the Wizard of Oz? So we stay in our little mud hole where, even though it's pretty crappy, we're pretty familiar with it. It's tempting to feel hopeless and irresponsible. It's just not true. We can change how we feel and what we believe. And then we can change how we behave. How do I know? I did. I've seen thousands of other people do it. So it has to be possible. To quote one of the characters in that famous literary masterpiece, it's a movie, The Edge, what one man can do, another man can do. If I can do it, you can do it. If the thousands of other people that I know who have changed can do it, so can you. I had a conversation in person, new subject, with a man and a woman, a couple. And she said, I don't like how he says harsh things to me. I said, well, like about what? She said, well, we'll be watching a show and he'll say something critical about the plot of the show that I like. I'm thinking, well, it's not about her, but she takes it about her. So I said, all right, to him, sometimes you have to adapt what you say or deliver to somebody according to the ability of the receiver to receive it. You know that it hurts her feelings to criticize the shows that she likes, so why speak harshly? If you know that it's going to hurt her feelings, even though she may be too sensitive, according to you at least, well then adapt your delivery. So for example, if you were in a championship baseball, you were in the World Series, and you're a World Series, you're an all-star shortstop, and the ball is hit to you, and the guy playing first base is an all-star first baseman, then you could throw the ball as hard as you can, close to 100 miles an hour to the first baseman. But what if you're playing in a different game? You're still an all-star shortstop. Somebody hits you the ball, but the person who's on first base is a 9-year-old kid. Now would you throw the ball as hard as you could, even though throwing the ball as hard as you could would be the only way to get the batter or the runner out? No, you wouldn't. Now you could stand there and go, oh, but I'm so right. In order to get the batter out, I had to throw it that hard. Yeah, and knock unconscious or possibly kill the first baseman. So we have to adapt what we do according to our circumstances. Some people can't hear straight talk like that or harsh talk. Now, to her, I said, because we were in person, I said, geez, honey, do you take things personal much? See, notice, what I say to the two of them is entirely different, because what I say to him is about him. What I say to her is about her. I said, it's a show. It's a television show. Unless you wrote and produced it, then his saying something harsh about the show isn't saying something about you. You like the show, but it's not yours. It's not you. She said, well, but sometimes he's harsh in the way that he talks to me about other things, like the way I do things. Ah, okay, well, that would be different. One, what do we do here? You have to let go of the past. Now, I'm talking to her. You have to let go of all the other times he's ever said something harsh to you. Ever. Because what you do is, each time he's harsh with you, you feel the hurt feelings, not just of that time, but of every harsh word he's ever spoken to you. And, we're not done, every harsh word that's ever been spoken to you. All the way back to your birth. Not kidding. And so it seems to him like an overreaction, because it is. Second, you need to help him. Clearly, he is not understanding that when he throws the ball 100 miles an hour to you at the first base, that he's knocking you out. So talk to him ahead of time and agree on something that you could say. And remember, they're both there when I'm talking to him. Agree on something you could say to indicate that he's being harsh. So we went through some things, because it doesn't do any good to tell one person to say something if they can't say it, or tell one person to say something if the other person can't hear it. So we experimented. I said to him, what if she said to you, that's harsh? All he had to do was wince, and I could tell that he couldn't hear that. I said, so let's keep experimenting. And I finally said, what if she said to you, would you mind saying that again as though you were talking to somebody you cared about? I had to bite my lip to keep from breaking into laughter just as I was saying it. But he smiled. He said, okay, I get it. He got the point that she was, by saying that, she would be gently mocking him. And oddly, he could take that. Now, the reverse isn't true. If he said the same thing to her, she'd be offended. She needs to hear a different kind of thing when she's harsh. But that works for him to hear, and she said she could say it. So when you're talking to somebody and they're consistently being offensive, inconsiderate, thoughtless, whatever, you have to come up with something that one person can say, that it wouldn't be just too foreign in their mouth, and that the other person can hear. Until you arrive at something that you both agree on, there's not going to be any way to bring it up. But if you care about each other at all, which works way better than attacking each other, you can find something. I've never yet found a couple where we couldn't come up with something that one of them could say and the other could hear. A woman wrote to me. She said, speaking of complaining, I think she must have been responding to a previous email, I can't remember. She said, my wise woman has helped me notice how much I complain. Wow, I sure do complain a lot. I know my mother does. She complains in every sentence she speaks. But I thought I wasn't like that, because I knew I didn't want to complain as much as her. But when I'm empty, it's like I don't know what to say other than complaining. And you've probably seen me do it many times. Yeah, I really have. You complain a lot more than you know, and I'm sure it is a lot less than your mother did. But less complaining is like less hate. It's like less anger. It's like less fear. It's like less fire in the house, burning up the walls. The goal is none. She continues, this morning, when I was all confused, I was texting with a wise woman, and I just felt like I couldn't say anything because everything I wanted to say was complaint. Things like, well, this is so hard, and I don't like it when, and I wish it was different, and I wish I could. All complaints. Bless your heart, honey, to see that these are complaints, because most people would argue. They would say, well, now, no, I'm not really complaining. Yeah, you really are. You don't see it yet, but you trust me, you really are. You continue. Those things come out of my mouth so easily. It's like I'm fluent in the language of complaining. It helps being aware of it, because then I can at least say something a little more truthful, like, I don't know how to speak right now without complaining. That would be a wonderful thing to say. I'm trying to learn the language of truth and love instead, but I'm just learning, so it takes a bit of conscious effort to speak that new language. Feels quite uncomfortable sometimes because I'm used to whining, but it's getting easier. And that's how you learn to do anything. You want to learn a new language of any kind, French, German, Chinese, whatever. It takes practice. Learning to speak lovingly and without complaints, that takes practice too. I'm going to repeat that quote that I used earlier from a blog, because it matters. If you've never been loved, fear is not a choice. It's a reflex. If you have been loved, fear can still be a reflex, but now you can choose what happens next. Without love, anything that happens becomes a threat or a potential threat, and you will react to the fear. If you've been loved, sometimes there will be that initial moment of fear. But now with love, you have an alternative. There's something else you can choose instead of being afraid. Hence, the power of having felt loved. It's huge. Here's somebody who wrote and said to me, I recently started spending time with somebody in the community, Bob, we'll call him, who has been generous in giving me rides to groups. The issue is that I've been showing up late to the place where he picks me up. Now Bob tells me that he won't give me any more rides unless I show up to the place where, he agreed to pick me up within the first 30 minutes. Bob is considerably more generous than I would be. I wouldn't wait for the 30 minutes. He said he could see that I was making choices that were not leading to my happiness, and he wanted to help me be happy. He described to me that he did a similar thing with his 17-year-old son, whom he had rescued from poor choices for years. The son would skip school, miss the bus, and then Jim would jump in to save him. Jim or Bob, and now I can't remember which is the real name. So since only the writer probably knows who this person is, it doesn't matter. But then he decided to teach his son responsibility by letting him experience the natural consequences of his choices. His son did learn. He has now found his own place to stay entirely on his own, found a job, and takes responsibility for himself instead of relying on other people to save him. Perfect. God bless Bob. His approach is quite reasonable. If you are not interested enough to be on time, why should he sit and wait and devote his time where he can be at group to get you there? 30 minutes? Crazy lenient. You continue. I could tell in Bob's telling me this and setting rules about my going to group that his intention is to care, but something doesn't feel quite right or healthy about this. I feel anger surface. I feel like he's trying to control what I do for his benefit. I mean this in only the best way when I'm saying that right now I'm not laughing with you. I'm laughing at you for his benefit. Sure. In part, I'm sure he finds it inconvenient to wait for you. So yeah, he would benefit secondarily. He might be trying to control you just a little, but he's trying to teach you something. If he weren't interested in teaching you at all, he wouldn't wait for you for 30 seconds. Being late to a meeting really is irresponsible, and he gets to choose whether he wants to participate in this. Many times you have said that you want to work on responsibility, and here's a good chance for you. You cannot expect your teachers to be perfect in their delivery. I have a standing policy. I mean, I talk to, a lot of people in a week. And because of that, I have to be careful about my time, or I would have none, and then I'd just be worn out. So when I tell somebody to call me at 2:10, at exactly 2:13, which is just sit and count to 180 to yourself, 1 second at a time, and see how long 3 minutes is. At the end of 3 minutes, I tell my assistant to tell people I've moved on to other calls, which is true. I have moved on to other calls. I learned a long time ago when I was a surgeon and people would have emergencies, and I used to tell them to meet me at my office. And because I was trying to save them an emergency room visit. And I learned that if somebody was more than 15 minutes late, the odds were very high, 80% or so, that they weren't going to show up at all. They decided, it doesn't hurt that bad. And so I quit being a convenience. I quit going all the way from home and dressing and coming down to the office. And I said, you go to the emergency room and you register there. And after you've registered there and the doctor has seen you, all of which is going to cost you, about $1,000, then they'll call me and I'll come down and take you over to my office, because there were so many people who didn't show up on time. So I've learned not to wait past 3 minutes, because mostly people just don't show up. And if they do that more than once, then we have a conversation. Because if somebody's less interested in their growth and happiness than I am, something's seriously wrong with this picture. And that's what Bob is trying to teach you. You continue. I feel thoroughly confused about this. The thing is, there have been times I really felt loved by Bob. I felt like he cares about me unconditionally, that he wants to see me happy. I trusted him and felt loved by him like a father. But in his stated terms that I do things a certain way in order to give me something I want, I don't feel loved. I feel controlled. And that has been a big obstacle for you in all the years I've known you. You want people to teach you important lessons while you don't do any of the work, while you never feel criticized, while you never have to modify your behavior. So you want to learn while you don't change your behavior. That's impossible. In fact, I remember very few lessons from college, but I remember this line: the true mark of learning something is a change in behavior. Without that, it's just words. You place the responsibility for how you feel and for your learning on other people. Doesn't work. I would suggest you be grateful for him and for what he's telling you, not critical of him, because this is a problem you've been dealing with for a lot of years. You say, so if Jim has decided that he'll give rides only in a certain time frame and I choose not to show up to group on time, I have to acknowledge that means I just don't get a ride. But I still get to choose what time I show up. Yes, see, he's not limiting you at all. And I tell people this almost every day. You get to choose when you show up. But if you want to go to group, then you have to show up on time. See, we all really want to make our own choices, which is appropriate, but then we want to choose the consequences for our choices. So I don't want to go to school. I don't want to work hard. I don't want to study, but I want a job that pays. I've had people tell me this with a straight face. I don't want to have to go to school and get a whole lot of training, but I would like a job that allows me to, express my creativity and choose my own hours, and that pays really well. And I'm thinking, if you find that job, please let me know and see if they have two. There are no such jobs. There are things that we have to prepare to do. There are sacrifices we have to make. There are rules we have to keep. Final question. You say, I guess I'm just asking, am I just really being selfish and thinking I should get to do whatever I want? Am I choosing not to trust somebody who's actually loving me? Or is this relationship unhealthy and I should stay away? You're being selfish. You can choose anything you want, but you want to make your choice and the consequence, and that is impossibly selfish. Kind of crazy, actually. If you do something once that's impossible, that's a mistake. If you do it twice, it kind of moves to stupid. And if you do it 100 times, it moves to full-blown crazy. And when it comes to responsibility, you're getting there to crazy. Here's somebody who wrote and said, a woman in my real love group, Martha, takes care of her 2 grandsons and some other children after school. One child is 9 and often behaves badly. The girl told Martha that she had a new baby sister, which she doesn't. Why would she do that? To get attention. Because she has seen what happens when other kids say they have a new baby sister or brother. It's lots of attention getting. In fact, there have been schools where a teenage girl has gotten pregnant, and in the old days, when I was in school, if you were a teenage girl and got pregnant, you just disappeared for 9 months. Then you came back and said you were on vacation or you were learning to speak, Babylonian. Nowadays, they let the pregnant girls not just come to school, but bring their babies to school. I just can't imagine a worse mistake than that. And there have been schools where, and this is the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, have analyzed outbreaks of pregnancy, just like an outbreak of Ebola virus. So some girl comes to school and no matter where you go, people pay attention to a newborn baby. Many times we've had seminars where people have said, can I bring my baby? She'll be quiet. And I say, or my dog. No. Well, there are laws that say I can bring my service dog. Yeah, to public places, but this is a private event, so no. Why? I don't care if the dog makes noise. I don't care if the child makes noise. Everybody else will pay attention to the child or the dog. So this girl brings a brand new baby to school, and the other girls are going, man, that is a lot of attention. And so they go out and intentionally get pregnant. They have had outbreaks of pregnancy. They don't quite call it a disease, but the attention-getting behavior is pretty close to a disease. So pretty nutty what people will do to get attention. Then this 9-year-old girl insisted that Martha, my friend, was supposed to take her to dance class. But Martha had no such instructions from the parents. In other words, there was no dance class. Then the girl put on her tap shoes and danced on the hardwood floor in the room where Mary was helping the other children with their homework. Mary told her that the other kids were doing their homework and to please be respectful of that. That's a cute idea, but be respectful. That gives a 9-year-old pretty much every opportunity on earth to pretend not to understand. It's not clear enough. You have to say, stop, and then take them aside and explain why. Maybe. Except you don't really need to explain why, because by the time they're 9 years old, you know exactly why you're telling them to stop. They've heard don't make too much noise so many times by the time they're 9, they know exactly why. She continues writing. The girl got angry, shocking, and said that the other kids were not respectful the day before when she was doing her homework, which it turns out was not true. So when Martha told the children that they couldn't have any more Halloween candy, the girl grabbed 2 more pieces of candy, this is the same 9-year-old, and put them in her mouth, saying, I'm going to chew this candy because it will help with my molars descending. 9 years old, the kid is a master manipulator. Give her a little mustache here and, put her in the right place and she can lead a country. She really has learned to manipulate and to use adult phrases that she's heard to justify what she does. You continue. I told Martha that it was likely that the parents were inconsistent with the child, that they got angry with her when she behaved in ways that they didn't like, but then didn't follow through with the things that they asked her to do or not to do, so the child has learned to get angry, to lie, and manipulate people to get her way. That would be a big yes and a second yes. Yes, what the kids learned. And that's what the parents do. Period. That's it. There isn't another reason. Kids don't make up this behavior. They learn it. You continue. Do you have any thoughts on how Martha can interact lovingly with this child who she takes care of 3 hours a day, 3 times a week? Sure. Read the parenting book, for one thing, but the short version is it's always love and teach. Always. First, she would really have to care about this girl. She can't fake this. She can't ever get angry and never put up with her stories of falsehoods or with her being disobedient or causing trouble. She'd have to immediately take action when the girl was a problem, every single time. What possibly... All right, the biggest problem I see in parents is that they're afraid of their children's disapproval. And the biggest symptom I see of that is inconsistency. So the child does something wrong and the parent goes, oh man, I don't want to have him mad at me. I don't want to put up with the tantrum. So they just let it happen. So the child lives in chaos. Like, I want you to imagine if for the next, 60 seconds, I were to click my fingers and there was no gravity on the earth. Well, there have been times when I've been riding a bike up a steep mountain that I wish there was no gravity. But what if that were to actually happen? We'd be screwed. Houses would come off their moorings. Everything would just be floating in the air. And then when those 60 seconds were over, heaven help us. It'd be way past any earthquake we've ever had. We need the reliability of gravity. Children need the reliability of parental gravity. So what can Martha do? She can take the tap shoes off when the kid is being noisy and put them away. After first explaining what respect is, but you just take the shoes. If she's disruptive, she sits in a chair. If she takes the candy, she takes the candy back. Or she says, fine, but we're going to have a treat at the end of the time that we have together, and you won't be getting one. You do this kind of thing consistently, and children tend to start paying attention. In fact, if you do it consistently, and I mean without fail, for 1 week, the kid's behavior will change. You point out when she lies. You tell her every time the girl gets angry, we don't get angry here. I have a great deal of experience of kids with all ages. And when you sometimes just say, we don't do that here. We just say what we want, and we say it in English. And then you help her practice. I worked with kids who were labeled everything. ADD, personality disorders, autistic kids who were just spoiled, rotten, entitled kids because their parents didn't teach them gravity. And when I was left alone with the kid could learn gravity after my being consistent for, like 15 minutes. So if you're consistent with a kid like this for 1 week, chances are very high that they'll get it. You can't make her get it at home, but you can make her get it while you're taking care of her or while Martha's doing it. But I emphasize that with another person's child, it's much tougher than with our own, because the girl spends nearly all of her time with parents who teach her that she can do whatever she wants to do. They teach her that there is no gravity. So there's often a period of adjustment when she comes to a place where there are actually rules. Teaching other people's kids is tough, but I've done that on many occasions, and it turns out kids like gravity. No kidding. They really prefer not to live in chaos. No joke. They like order. Here's somebody who said, I finally felt it last night. I can't remember what it is. I got it. It took maybe 5 years longer than it should have, but I got it. All of those hundreds of calls with me, seminars, time, all of it happened because you love me. That first seminar in Dallas was the first time anyone really paid attention to me. My parents didn't. They couldn't. But you did. Because you love me. Now, this person who's writing, and I frankly don't remember who it is, it's not about me. It's that somebody loved her. Could have been anybody. There's nothing special about mine. She said, I remember you telling me that you had talked to Donna about me at night. And I realized I was that important, that you would think about me when I wasn't even there. You didn't care whether I was a boy or a girl, whether I was confident or afraid, skilled or inept. You saw underneath it all and saw me. You loved me. Reading your words from an old email that I have from clear back then, I could feel the truth of it and the love of it clear back then. And after 5 years of this, I think I might just finally be getting it. And I understand that you're going to love me no matter what I choose. It's all for me to be happier. The truth poured out, and for an hour I could not stop crying. I don't know what I'm going to do with this from here, how I will retain the love or face the rest of the truth, but right now I'm just going to trust it and run with it, because the simple truth is still true. You love me, you did all this for me, and I was worth it, and I still am. For everybody who's listening, it's no kidding this simple. Finding somebody that you can trust and allowing them to love you and believing that they love you. And then remember that they love you. Changes everything. Once one person loves you unconditionally, you couldn't possibly be worthless, because that person disproves that. How could you possibly be not worth loving if that person does? That's assuming that they're not insane or that it's an accident. She continues, I think it's a she. I could not be more thankful for the gift that I was given last night in feeling it. The peace is amazing. And my final response was, after 5 years, you might want to print this email out and remember it. Because it's, as we've talked about over and over and over again, you find the love, which this person did for 5 years. You trust the love, which took her a very long time to do. Then we finally remember it so that we don't have to be getting it all the time, which was her big mistake. She thought she just had to keep getting more and more and more and more, but she wasn't trusting or remembering it. And then eventually we learned to share it, and then it just perpetuates. It's like it multiplies like rabbits. It's very fun to watch. And this is something that we can all learn to do. We can all learn to find love. We can all learn to trust it and remember it and share it. It is a law. It is dependable. It is guaranteed. I promise. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you next week.